Not every team can win the NBA Finals, so that begs the question, what does a successful season look like for every NBA team? Well, let's go to the West. Now, if you missed last week's episode, here is the quick recap. We went through the East. We had a special guest on the show, by the way, so if you missed it, go check it out. We had a great hour of talking ball. This one should be a lot quicker. But in the Eastern Conference, it's very spread out, right? There's a lot of parity in the Eastern Conference, with only a few teams having the heightened expectations of making and winning the NBA Finals. But of course, you see the parity, you see how balanced it is. And I bring that up because today is not going to be that way. It's going to be very top heavy in the West because, well, the West is the best. At least many say that. So the expectations are lofty. We're going to go in alphabetical order. You see the tiers at the bottom, and I could explain them, but we're going to talk about all of them as we go on. Let's start with the Dallas Mavericks. This is a team that last year was one for the storybooks, to say the least. But this year, you look at the roster, very talented, filled with very quality role players, and some of them have championship experience. Some of them have won the thing, like Klay Thompson has many, many times. But then you add in the fact that, hey, you brought in Cooper Flagg, the no-brainer number one overall pick, a guy that could be a perennial all-star, all-NBA level player. And then you add in the fact that, well, Anthony Davis is returning, and hopefully he's healthy for the entire season. And Kyrie, when he returns about the midseason mark, if he does, this is a roster that has everything to go compete for a championship. But Kyrie, again, will probably miss at least the midseason mark, and then he's going to need some ramp-up period before the postseason comes along. So when I look at this roster, they have the stars, they have the youth in Cooper Flagg, and they have the versatility to pretty much match up and guard and outscore everybody. So for that reason, I just want to see Cooper Flagg take steps in his individual game this year as far as contributing to a winning team. Anthony Davis stay healthy. And I think a successful season for Dallas would be to be afloat, and then when Kyrie returns, he catches his stride, and they go on to make the playoffs and make some noise in the first round. I'm not saying they have to win it, right? I'm talking about baseline here. And I think that if they go in the first round as a lower seed and they put up a multi-game series against the top seed in the West, I think that is a successful season for the Dallas Mavericks because at that point, the continuity is there with this current group. And then going into next year, year two with Cooper Flagg, that's when I think, if fully healthy, you can shoot for the stars as far as being a title contender. This year, let's just set the baseline for what's to come. Now for the Denver Nuggets, they're on the opposite side of the spectrum. This is a team that has revamped the roster. Out went Michael Porter, in comes Cam Johnson, in comes Bruce Brown back into the mix, and this roster is now complete. They are well-rounded, more so than ever maybe, around Nikola Jokic. And hopefully, he doesn't have to play 44 minutes a night for this team to win games and not go down by double digits. Look, just for the simple fact that you went to the finals a couple years ago. You won the thing, and now you have the best player in the world with a very talented roster around him and a coach that's trying to prove himself. For those reasons, I think it's NBA Finals or bust for the Denver Nuggets. And honestly, I think it is championship or bust for the Denver Nuggets, which is unfair with a really first-year full-time starting head coach. However, you have the best player in the world, and you got a talented roster that has already been there and done that before. You got to live up to these expectations and really solidify Jokic's legacy more so than it already is. Speaking about legacy, the Warriors have a ton of those players. Of course, headlined by Steph Curry, Draymond Green, guys that have won multiple NBA Finals in their careers, are trying to add another one before they decide to hang up the boots. And now, of course, Jimmy Butler will get a full year to work in with those two guys. This is a roster that is extremely old, the oldest roster in the league. I think they have an average age of 35 years or older. It's insane. I've never seen anything like this in my life. They just added Al Horford into the mix. And this is a roster that didn't really do much. They still have to, sign two or three more guys before the season starts, and then they're going to have to incorporate some of those guys into the mix if one of these older guys needs some rest or if they go down with injury. Hopefully they don't. But again, that is a possibility with an 82-game season. For the Warriors, I'm worried about the continuity. I'm worried about some of these newer faces that are going to be added late before the season, how they work in this Steve Kerr system. They're not going to be, relied on a nightly basis, but if they are, how quickly can they adapt? We see a guy like Jonathan Kuminga who's uber talented, but he just doesn't fit in this system. So I'm interested to see how they round out this roster. But with all of that being said, you have the star player in Steph Curry. You have a very good roster around him. But I think given the fact that you have such a decorated duo on this roster, you need to go to the NBA Finals. You need to give Steph Curry one last shot at adding a ring to his resume for this to be considered a successful season. I'm not going to say you have to win it, but at least give Steph Curry, Jimmy Butler, Draymond a chance at glory, which of course is going back to the top of the mountain. For the Rockets, this is a team that lost, but they also gained a lot this offseason. Of course, it started with Kevin Durant, and then you lost Fred VanVleet. However, I think that's going to be a blessing in disguise because Amen Thompson, with the second half of the season we saw last year, he was electric. And I think putting the ball in his hands this year, in the absence of Fred VanVleet, is going to be a sight to see. This is a roster that has the defense, the length, they have the IQ, and guys like Sengun and multiple others. And then they also have now the leading scorer and the closer, the killer, the silencer in Kevin Durant. You could put the Grim Reaper, right? This is a guy in Kevin Durant that is going into a roster that is a very complete. They have good coaching, and his role is simple. Like I mentioned, he just has to be the closer and the leading scorer on a nightly basis. Hello, that is what Kevin Durant's MO has been in his entire NBA career. I think joining this roster, despite losing Fred VanVleet, I think making it to the playoffs and getting out of the first round at the baseline would be a successful season because Durant hasn't been out of the first round, and well, the rest of this core on the Rockets hasn't been out of the first round in years outside of Fred VanVleet, but again, he's injured. So for the Rockets, at the baseline, get out of the first round of the playoffs, but I think going into at least the second round, making some noise, maybe even making the conference finals would be considered a successful season in Houston. Now, the Unction was the name of the LA Clippers, but the Warriors kind of took that mantle by a storm as they're an older roster by far. But for the Clippers, you have so many aging veterans that are trying to get that last stamp on their legendary careers. Kawhi, I'm sure, wouldn't mind adding another ring to his resume. You have guys like Harden, Chris Paul. Of course, you have some younger guys on this roster like Zubac. All of these guys are trying to get their first or another ring to their resume. Tyronn Lue is trying to get another one outside of working with LeBron and Kyrie Irving. For this roster, they've been close in years prior, but injuries have happened at the wrongest of times. That's not a word. At the worst times. There we go. For this roster, right? When Kawhi got hurt, they still went to the Western Conference Finals. Now they have some new faces in here. You know, last year, going into the playoffs, they were making a lot of noise. They won 17 of 18 games, and this is a team that just kind of flunked out in the second half of that series against the Denver Nuggets, who ultimately won it in 7 games. For the Clippers, it's simple. You have a lot of aging players. They know what it takes to win. I'm interested to see how they are managed as far as the rest throughout the season and if that impacts their seeding at the end of the day. But again, deep playoff run, make it out the first round at the bare minimum. But outside of that, anything else is a positive. I would say, though, I would like to see them make at least the third, maybe the conference finals, given all these veterans on their roster. Now, the other LA team will go across town with the LA Lakers. This is a team that, simply because you have LeBron James, make the finals, right? Give that guy another chance to solidify himself as a GOAT in many's eyes, if he's not already, by winning another NBA Finals. If you can make the finals and give LeBron that opportunity, I think that is the baseline for a successful season in LA. Outside of that, you want to see Luka return to form. JJ Redick just got extended. He's here to stay. It is a very talented roster, and they have a lot of versatility. But can LeBron and Luka put it all together on both ends of the court and lead this team to where they should be with the talent they have, the NBA Finals? So for the Lakers, I want to see them make a run. I think they can win it all. Will they? I don't know. But I think making the finals and giving LeBron just that last chance like Stephen Curry would be a successful season. You see already, we got a lot of these teams up at the top of this, top of these tiers, whereas as far as the East, it was a lot more balanced. For the Memphis Grizzlies, there's no Desmond Bane in the mix now. It is strictly on Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. They're going to have to shoulder more than ever going into this year with their tertiary star being Santi Aldama, who, by the way, was really good in Eurobasket. But this year, I'm not sure if he can be a legitimate third option on a team that wants to compete at a very high level. Santi's good. He's good, right? But I don't know if he's on the level of Desmond Bane yet. Now, for the Grizzlies, can you get that MVP level version of John Morant back? That's a question we got to wait and see. Same with Jaren Jackson. Can he be a little more aggressive on the boards? Can he still bring you that all NBA impact on the defensive side while also taking a step offensively, which he's going to have to do this season if they want to compete in this loaded conference? Ultimately, I'm saying it again, I think making the playoffs and being a tough first round out at the baseline would be a successful season for the Memphis Grizzlies. Now, a team that is trying to rely on the simple saying of third time's a charm, the Minnesota Timberwolves. Yes, they're a little bit behind my face cam here, but for the Timberwolves, you've made back-to-back Western Conference Finals with a different co-star next to Anthony Edwards. That is incredibly impressive on all accounts there, as far as the veterans like Conley and Rudy Gobert playing their role. You have Chris Finch working with Anthony Edwards and a different co-star. Two different play styles between Cat and Julius Randle. But again, they have been the underdog 2 years in a row, and they've made incredible runs 2 seasons in a row. Anthony Edwards has become more unguardable than ever last season, of course, as he added the three-point ball to his game, and he made the most threes in the league, and he shot it at the highest clip. Anthony Edwards was amazing, and he's a top 10 player in the game today. There's no question about it. But for this roster, you've been there. You've done that, right? You're teasing your fan base to a degree because you're one step away from the biggest dance. And honestly, though they are lofty expectations, I think this year you have to make the NBA Finals for it to be considered a successful season. You have a lot of veterans that won't be around forever, and you have good role players like Jaden McDaniels, of course, Julius Randle, Anthony Edwards. This is a roster that you have the talent, you have the defense, and you have the coaching. But this year, you have to take that next step. Get to the biggest dance. I'm not saying win it, but kind of be like the Mavericks 2 years ago where they made it and they lost it because they just weren't truly ready for the moment. I think that would be considered a successful season in Minnesota, and you could just never count this team out. So that's the reason I'm saying Minnesota, at the bare minimum, have to make the NBA Finals, just for the simple fact that they've been at the Final Four 2 years in a row. Now, a team that should be at that point, but injuries have gotten in the way and weight issues and everything under the sun. The New Orleans Pelicans, a roster that has so much talent with Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, Jose Alvarado, and Zion Williamson, who, by the way, looks really, really good right now. This is the same song and dance every year. There's a lot of preseason hype around this roster, and rightfully so. But when it goes into the regular season, there's injuries that get in the way. There's a lot of confusion with how this offense is supposed to operate, and ultimately this team just never clicks at the heights that they are supposed to. DeJounte Murray is also returning. I forgot about that, but hey, all NBA level defender is joining Herb Jones, Trey Murphy. That defense is going to be elite there in New Orleans. But if Zion can't stay healthy, they're just going to be another team that underperforms for yet another season. For New Orleans, I think number one is Zion stays healthy, but number two is making the play-in and at least win a game. At least go to that very last game where the winner gets the 8th seed and the loser goes home. If you can do that with this talented of a roster and now a veteran head coach, I think at the bare minimum that would be considered a successful season. Now let's go back to the top. The reigning champions, a team that was the youngest team to ever win the NBA Finals, the Oklahoma City Thunder. Now, there has been this trend over the last 8 or 9 years where we've had a different champion every single season. And that's due to all these new second apron rules and all these rules that they're implementing to stop super teams. The problem with that is that Sam Presti was playing chess while other GMs were playing checkers. The Oklahoma City Thunder just stacked their first round picks, right? They made all the right moves. They gave all the right people the opportunity. And this is a roster that is so young, but yet so dominant. If there was any team to break this cycle of a new champion every year, it has to be the Oklahoma City Thunder. Though they're going to have less rest than everybody going into this year, though they are, coming off a deep playoff run, and then they're relying on all these guys, though they have young legs, to play yet through another full season. This is a roster that is complete top to bottom. I think they're able to rest some of their guys on, if need be throughout the season. And this is a team that, again, they check all the boxes. Even the continuity's there. They have the experience now paired with their youth. Unlike the teams that come before them that were much more veteran led, this is a team that it has the youth on their side. And if there was any team to again break the cycle, as I've said that a couple times, it should be this Oklahoma City Thunder squad. So for the reason that you tasted this success last year, you want to get back to the top of the mountain. So they are a championship or bust kind of a situation. But unlike a lot of the veteran teams before them, there's no panic involved with the Thunder because you're just going to come back in 27 if you don't win it, and you're going to be a title favorite yet again. For the Phoenix Suns, notable development. This is the team that ever since their finals run has continuously gotten worse and more dysfunctional and more underwhelming, I guess is another word I could throw out there. They've had a lot of talent, whether from Chris Paul to DeAndre Ayton to Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal. Now all of that is gone. Now it is just Devin Booker for the first time in years. And now they've added Jalen Green into the mix. And I want to see outside of Devin Booker, whether if it's Jalen Green or Nick Richards or one of these younger players on the roster, who can be that second building block that gives these fans and this organization hope going forward. I don't have really much expectations for the Suns this year. I think if they're right outside the play-in, or hey, if they make the play-in and they lose in the first game, that's kind of what I'm expecting, simply because I respect Devin Booker. But for this roster, the biggest thing this year would be if one of these younger players steps up and steps out and separates themselves from the pack, along with Devin Booker as the second guy in this organization going forward, right? So all of that is basically to say notable development, and I want to see someone next to Devin Booker be that second building block so they can build this thing the right way and not name chase like they did years ago. We have the Portland Trailblazers, and just like I said for the Suns, that was exactly what the Trailblazers did just last season. There were so many young players on this roster, but they didn't know who was the guy or the guys to really be the building blocks going forward. Well, Denny stepped up. He stepped out, and he solidified. He separated himself from the pack as a mini version of Luka Doncic for the Portland Trailblazers. He's a taller wing. He can handle the rock. He can run the offense, but he can also go out there and get his own when he is called upon to do so. For the Blazers, whether if it's Scoot Henderson, whether if it's Donovan Clingan, whether if it's Shaedon Sharpe, who's going to be that guy that, for one, can stay healthy, but also progress to a level next to Denny or even surpass Denny that gives this organization and their fans hope that, hey, we have two really, really big building blocks going forward that we can get excited about, basically, is what I'm trying to say. So Portland has they already went through the situation that I think the Suns will face this season. Hopefully the Suns can actually, do what the Portland Trailblazers did. But for Portland, make the play-in and win a game. Last year, second half of the year, you made a crazy run. You almost made the play-in, but you were a few games out. This year, if you make the play-in and at least win a game, I think that would be considered a successful season, even with the fact that I would think one of these younger guys next to Denny will separate themselves from the pack like I've talked about here in length. The Sacramento Kings, they're the Sacramento Kings. I mean, they're stuck in purgatory. I love Domantas Sabonis. He's led the league in rebounding 4 straight seasons. You have a guy like Zach LaVine who had a very quiet but elite season last year. DeMar DeRozan's your closer, still one of the best go-to scorers in the game today. But when you look at this roster, it's just they're good enough to stay away from the lottery, but they're far from good enough to actually compete and be a legitimate team in this conference. Now, if they're in the Eastern Conference, we talk about them differently. But that's not the reality. For the Kings, I just think, honestly, for me, I would say hopefully they're just terrible this season. Hopefully they realize their actual destiny, and that is to eventually move off some of these veterans and just rebuild from the ground up. But I think this organization is just happy being good enough, and with that mindset, making the playoffs is simply good enough for me. I think that's the baseline that would be a successful season, even if you make it and you get swept in the first round. I think if the Kings were able to get to the playoffs, like they have in years prior, that's the baseline for me. Again, not a very exciting team. I would like to see some of their veterans elsewhere and them to rebuild, but obviously that is not in their cards in 2025. Now, for the San Antonio Spurs, that is another roster that had to tear things down and rebuild from the ground up. Now, it helps when you get Victor Wembanyama, maybe the greatest impact defender in the first 100 games of any career, right? For Victor Wembanyama. But for sure, he's on the trajectory to be an all-time great. This is a roster that has so much young talent, and it is the same sentiment I've shared with many teams. Who can be that guy next to Wemby and De'Aaron Fox that can solidify themselves as a guy going forward? And outside of that, this is a roster that when Wemby's healthy, they win. They shock people. They win games they're not supposed to win. And if Wemby continues to progress, it's going to be scary. And I see a lot of people having them make the playoffs this year. And I might be there with you guys. But for baseline expectations and a successful season, I would say making the play-in and winning a game. Maybe even just making the playoffs and losing in the first round. Anything in that range for me, for the Spurs, would be considered a successful season. And again, hopefully Wemby, no more health concerns. Hopefully he's ready to go for a full season in 2025 because we're going to be spoiled as NBA fans. Finally, with the Utah Jazz, it is the same sentiment I've shared. Who can step up and who can separate themselves? For the Jazz, you have a lot of young talent. Of course, you just had all this offseason drama with Ace Bailey. I want to see how that works out on a night-to-night basis. And I want to see, hey, do you finally move off of a guy like Walker Kessler? If not, can he be that Rudy Gobert of this Utah Jazz team and really, wait for one of these younger guards or wings to elevate themselves to a level where they now have a newer version of Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert? I want to see how this Jazz team plays this year. I think they can be exciting to start the season, but hopefully this is a young roster that just doesn't give up hope and, they're a 15-win team yet again, because if that's the case, I'm not going to watch them much past the first month of the season. But that's it, man. You see the East was a lot more balanced, and we'll go back to that here in a moment. The West, not so much, man. You're either really on the bottom or you're a top-heavy team. Because, again, some people say the West is the best. And for a large part, they would be true and correct. But here is a collection of everybody, man. Last week we did the East. This week, of course, we did the West. All 30 teams, where do they sit as far as what a successful season would look like? This is my take on things. Now, if you need if you missed the team, right, if you didn't see the Eastern Conference and you want to go back and see my reasoning as to why, go check out the video from last week, man. But here it is. Of course, you have 6 teams, and I think it's really you got to at least make the finals situation. But then you have a lot of teams like, you have the bottom feeders. You have everything for you. Here's the list. Comment down where your team is, and let me know where they should be on your rankings. But that is episode 319, Defining Success. What a successful season looks like at the baseline for every single NBA team. It's always a fun thing I like doing. This is the second year of doing this. But hey, we're on the road to 18,000 subscribers. If you enjoyed, support us down below. Man, it's a free big red button. Hit subscribe. Helps out the channel. Helps pump out the algorithm. But ultimately, again, it brings you back to these videos where we're going to build a great community. But ultimately, that is it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you guys next week.